It is Friday, June 27th, 2025. I'm Heath Lambert, and the biggest story of the week is declarations of victory after the ceasefire in Iran.
US President Donald Trump has declared Israel and Iran have agreed to a ceasefire.
A ceasefire has been, quote, fully agreed to by Israel and Iran. There will be a complete and total ceasefire.
And the ceasefire has been declared both by the United States, but also now on Iranian state television.
On last week's biggest story, I talked about the conflict in Iran and all we did not know about how that conflict would develop. We now know much more than we imagined we might just a week ago. In just one short week, everything has changed. We now know that President Donald Trump ordered American pilots to drop thousands of pounds of bombs on Iranian nuclear facilities. And, in a development that no one expected to come so quickly, we are in a somewhat tenuous ceasefire between Iran and Israel. On this week's biggest story, I want us to see what we can learn as we examine the response of various people involved in this conflict. First, let's look at one of the statements from Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel.
During the 12 days of the Operation Rising Lion, we achieved a historic victory, and this victory will stand for generations. We removed from upon us two immediate existential threats, the threat of annihilation by nuclear bombs and the threat of annihilation by 20,000 ballistic missiles. If we had not acted now, the state of Israel would soon be facing the danger of annihilation.
Prime Minister Netanyahu declares an historic victory and makes plain the Israelis have accomplished the removal of the existential threats. This sounds different than the statement from the Iranian military following their launch of rockets on a military base in the region that took no lives and injured no person.
Operation Basharat Fath, a devastating and powerful missile attack on the American terrorist base in Al Udeid, Qatar. This base is the headquarters of the Air Force Command and the largest strategic asset of the American terrorist army in the West Asia region. The message of the decisive action by the sons of the nation in the armed forces to the White House and its allies is clear and explicit. The Islamic Republic of Iran, relying on Almighty God and its faithful and renowned people, will never leave any violation of its territorial integrity, sovereignty, and national security unanswered.
Here, the military leadership of Iran does not speak like those over whom Israeli forces won an historic victory, but like those who are going strong, are not backing down, and have nothing to fear from Israeli and American forces. Finally, let's look at some statements from Donald Trump, who's been frustrated this week by any suggestion that the American attack was anything other than successful.
I think the reason we're here is because those pilots, those B-2 pilots, did an unbelievable job. And, you know, the fake news, like CNN in particular, they're trying to say, well, I agree that it was destroyed, but maybe not that destroyed. You know what they're doing? They're really hurting great pilots that put their lives in the line. CNN is scum, and so is MSDNC. They're all, and frankly, the networks aren't much better. It's all fake news, but they should not have done that. Those pilots hit their targets. Those targets were obliterated, and the pilots should be given credit.
These three separate responses provide two very different perspectives on the end of the conflict with Iran. The two different perspectives have each of the opposing sides essentially declaring victory, stating that events are going the way they want them to go, and claiming that they are tougher and more effective than their opponents. Christians need to consider three principles as we listen to these competing claims. The first principle has to do with the importance of strength in political and international leadership. The difference between the various and competing claims by world leaders about the state of the conflict in Iran is based on those leaders' understanding about how important it is to appear strong. Each of the leaders need to project strength for all sorts of reasons, including boosting morale, maintaining control, fending off more attacks, or strengthening their negotiating position. These leaders speak the way they do because they know that wars are not won by weakness, but by strength. Since it is actual strength that wins real wars and not just the projection of it, what is most important is not what these leaders are saying, but what the truth is behind their words. That gets to the second principle, the importance of knowing the truth. When we hear mutually exclusive claims, we know one side is telling the truth and the other is not. The issue of great importance is how to tell the difference. We're often tempted to believe something is true because we want it to be true or we want to believe the person telling it. The biblical reason to believe the truth is when that belief is warranted. 2 Corinthians 13:1 says every charge must be established by the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses. Biblical belief is warranted when there is evidence. In the conflict with Iran, it is much more warranted to believe that the United States and Israel devastated the Iranian ability to make war than it is warranted to believe that Iran is just about to finally teach its enemies a lesson they will never forget. But some things are more complicated. For example, there is a conflicting claim regarding how much damage the American airstrikes did to Iranian nuclear ambitions. The Trump administration has strong interest in reporting the obliteration of that nuclear program. Enemies of the United States and the president have strong interest in denying such obliteration. The biblical principle we must remember here is the one of humbly reserving judgment. As a matter of fact, the state of those nuclear plants is unknown to almost everyone watching the biggest story of the week and may not be known to a living soul at this moment. John 7:24 says, "Do not judge by appearances, but judge with right judgment." James 1:19 says, "Let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak." The idea is that it is unwise to speak into issues we don't know and don't understand. It is a wiser course to wait, listen, learn, let the facts become clear, and know that time always tells the truth. In a world of immediate news and hot takes, it's best to admit when we don't have all the facts and reserve judgment until we do. The final principle is the elusive nature of lasting peace. The world is breathing a sigh of relief over the ceasefire this week, and I am too. But we can safely predict that we have not witnessed the end of violence in the Middle East. Israel did not stop fighting because it wanted to, and Iran did not stop fighting because it suddenly decided they love America and Israel. The fighting has only stopped for practical and political reasons. War will return to the region because war still exists in the hearts of those who live there. That's why Isaiah 9:6 is such good news when it declares that Jesus is the Prince of Peace. Jesus is the one who comes to bring lasting peace with God in the hearts of all who trust in him. And Jesus is the one, and Jesus is the only one, who will bring lasting peace to the world when he returns on the clouds to put his enemies under his feet. We must await that last great day to live in a world of eternal peace. Until then, we must pray for seasons of relative peace that last as long as possible. That is the biggest story of the week. The month of July is going to be very busy for me. I'll spend 1 week on vacation with my family, and we'll spend the rest of the time working on projects for First Baptist Jacksonville that require my full attention. Because of that, I'm going to be taking a break from the biggest story of the week. Much is going on in our country and around the world. We'll keep a close eye on it, and I will look forward to being with you again on August the 8th to examine the biggest story.